thus the capacity to abandon itself, to forget itself, to hide from itself, and thus to make the most completely convincing illusion. But in play, and so the activity, the creative activity of the Godhead in Hinduism is called Leela, which means
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Amber Crimmings. I am the Artistic Director / Cat Herder for Deep Ellum Art Company, and we bring these ArtCo afternoon arts to you in your homes, in whatever spot you might be in as you're watching these, so that we can help grow the creative arts and then also connect you with that as well, because that really is our big mission, to connect community with the creatives and uplift everyone in a variety of ways, to include commerce and in building our skills in our toolboxes. I'm really big on that. I've got a teaching background, and I also understand all the really hugely positive benefits that we tend to overlook with the creative arts. There's a lot of research and bases out there that kind of helps us create stuff. So I like to do days like this. This is Throwback Thursday. This is a really fun class that even the simples can do. Doobs likes to hang out on these, and this is really just playing with stick figures. The most basic of things that even people who say, I can't even draw a stick figure, well, you probably can. And we're going to play with some different ways to kind of take the stick figures, play with some materials that we might have in our home, and then also, add some color into our lives. I like these days because it pulls me back to teaching the super young ones. It's always so much fun to do some simple color stuff, and it's fun to create like a young one again. Don't you remember, if you're an adult watching, do you ever remember like drawing something like this big huge scribble mess and like running up to someone and being like, look, I drew an elephant, and it looks nothing like an elephant? But hopefully you had somebody who was supportive and loving and caring and said, oh honey, darling, that's the best elephant I have ever seen. And so, as a child, we connect with the creative process because we enjoy the act of creating. We don't feel that kind of like guilt or holding back or being like, well, this isn't good enough to show anybody, right? We're excited because we had so much fun during the creative process that really meant more than the actual end result and image. And so this is a really great thing to get back to as an adult, because we always have so much pressure for things to be perfect. We always have this pressure that if we're practicing, we've always got to, do things perfect and correct. This right here is a great stretching of muscles for me, putting these classes out, and I aim to make them realistic. I aim to make these projects attainable, because if you watch somebody that does everything super perfect and it's bright light and there's never any mistakes, and you're like, well, I can't be like that, so I'm just going to have fun watching the class. I'd rather it feel more humanized, because all of these processes in the end are human processes, and in the end we're all both teachers and students. None of us have 100% of the knowledge, and I have found in my almost 42 years, or yes, I am now 42, so it is 42 years, that those that are smart enough to know that they're not smart enough usually are the smarter of the people in the room. Hey Bill, hey Linda, happy you guys are hanging out with us. We're going to play with some stick figures. I guess I'll stop talking about adult stuff and we'll start talking about some of our creative stuff. Now I've got some basic tools here. You can pull together anything that you have in your home. I've got a bunch of markers. I've got oil pastels. You can use crayons, sub those in as well. I've got some watercolor, and then of course I have my rando cup full of my pencils and a lot of my waterproof pens, because this will help me kind of figure out and play around with my stick figures. Now, how many of y'all have ever said before, I can't even draw a stick figure? My dad, that was always his favorite saying, because, he was trying to figure out where I had gotten my drawing prowess from. I say it's because I was an only child and we didn't get out much, so I was drawing or playing with my cat. Not this cat, I had another cat. when I was a kid. From a baby, she lived till 18 and a half. She was the best cat ever. Her name was Dinky, and I would call her Stinky because I couldn't say my D's or my R's right when I was younger. And so I would always tell everybody my cat was Stinky. Yeah, it's not too terrible. All right, I'm going to get this cut off, and we're just going to work on some practice paper right now because I want to showcase a couple different things for you guys. And now stick figures are really basic structures, right? It's like the easiest way, the most simple way to kind of show what a person is and what they're doing. So if you've never done a stick figure before, I am going to get my paper laid out and we're going to show you just how we're going to do that. Now I'm just going to use a regular marker. Well, I'm going to use a regular pen for this one. And we're going to play around with some, you know, different stick figures. Remember, a stick figure can have a round for a face. You can get that nice little circle there for your stick figure. I've got a nice long line for the back. And of course, we got to have some legs. And then we've got some arms, right? I've got a big old stick figure. And then, you know, if I want to change them up, I can, you know, instead of my arms going up, I can make my arms go down. I can, you know, do my legs at angles and make them look like I'm running away. And, you know, I can put little happy faces on him. He's kind of missing his back, so I'm going to put that one because look at this guy. Hey, there's my mom joke for the day. Look at that. Ha ha. Look, Doobs, he didn't think it was funny at all. Well, I tried. So there's some stick figure humor for you. But your stick figures are basic. They're super, you know, just simplistic, showcasing a person. And this is where we really want to pay attention to what those figures are doing. Like, you know, if I want to add a couple details on there, you know, I can bend and curve things. I can make it look like I've got a little stick figure doing a little dance, right? We can have fun with that. Look at him dancing. I don't know, he's shaking a leg, right? And so we can play around with our stick figures in order to make them do a lot of really fun things. So I think we're just going to play with a couple different ways in order to turn this into a project now that we got some of the basics of stick figures down. Now if you have somebody at home with you, you can also have them model for you. So if you've got a buddy or a friend and you want them to model some poses for you to look at as you draw your stick figures, you can totes get all of that done. So you guys can pair up and take turns and then draw each other. I'm going to do one project in here because I want to do a stick figure that shows these actions, right? And then when we think about it, when we do an action, it causes something else to happen, right? Like if you are in the bathtub and you swish water around, you're going to create a wave, right? And so you don't want to do that towards the outside because then it'll go all over the wall. You can do it up against the wall or maybe not wave in the bathtub at all because you're an adult. Or maybe you're not an adult and you're a kid. Or maybe you're an adult who likes to be a kid and play in the bath. I don't judge. Anyway, our actions radiate and butterfly out. So I kind of like to play with that with our stick figures because I want to do a stick figure and we're going to play with contour lines radiating out or coming out from our stick figures. So I'm going to work on a small page here. I've got my little book and I really want to kind of think about what shape and what movement I might want my stick figure to be doing. So in thinking about all this, you know, maybe I want my stick figure to be, I don't know, I kind of like the dancing one. So I think I'm just gonna do that, and I'm gonna do it kind of big, and I'm gonna draw this out with my pencil first, and maybe I'll do a guy that's, I don't know, like he's running. That's like his foot, yeah? Does that kind of looks like it there. And then I'll put a couple lines for his hands or her hands. I'm not attaining, I don't mean to do that. I default, I guess. Probably because I was I don't know. I just default to the he for some reason. I don't know why. Bill says, China Cat, it's okay to grow up but never get old inside. Yes, exactly. So I've got my person drawn out. I'm pretty happy with this. So I think I'm going to start using my markers. Remember, we're talking about our stick figures and how, you know, we can use our contour lines. And contour lines are lines that follow the outside edge of our shapes. So I'm going to get this all drawn in. I'm using a brush function on here because I wanted to get a variety of line widths in here. That way I could get a really fun kind of shape in here. And make sure that, you know, we're playing around with this in a really fun manner. I don't know what I'll do for the face, but maybe I'll do that in a little bit and just get the head markered out. And now we're going to play around with our contour lines. Now remember, kids, contour lines are lines that hug right up against our main line. And this is really just going to be a practice of staying very, very close and picking colors that contrast. We don't want any white paper to show in between. And you know, you can move your book around because right now, since I've got that black on there, maybe this water orange is picking it up a little bit. So I'm going to pull this away from it. It creates this really cool look as we start going outwards from our shape. Let me get that cleaned off. And we'll create this really cool rainbow effect as we go around it. I'm cleaning off some of my marker. And you see I'm going to go all the way around my hand. And we're going to do this with multiple colors as we continue to push and get this pushed around. I think I drug my hand on it, so we'll be more careful. We might actually get a little piece of paper there, because I'm left-handed, y'all, and left-handers are notorious and bad for smudging things because of our hand actually goes on top of it as we draw. Okay, so I'm getting all these colors in. We're getting this first one, this orange, all the way around. And you see it is mixing with that black a little bit, but that's okay. Our first one's a little bit rougher because of how that, I don't know why that black was moving around so much. It was supposed to be waterproof. So now I'm going on to my next color. I'm going to choose a color. Whoops, that one's got a really fine tip on it. I'm going to choose a color that's nice and contrasting. So I'm going to go on the outside of this with my green. Remember, I want to make sure that I don't have any white space in between my colors, but I also want to make sure all my colors are showing and that I'm not overlapping too much. Now this is where our contour lines are really important, because I'm just going to make sure I'm hugging that outside edge of my cool stick figure doing things. And I'm thinking about how what it's doing is going to radiate out and change. Again, this is a super fun one for us to play with. This is easy, y'all. And you can do this for a bunch of different versions of activities that you could get your stick figures to do. You know, if you're going to tackle drawing, stick figures are the perfect first tackle. And it's a nice way to simplify the human body and what it does, the movements of it, etc., etc. So I'm going to go in. Ooh, that red looks really close to the orange. I don't think I want to do that. Do we have a pink here? Here, we'll stick with that one. And you see I got closed off right here, but that's okay. This will become its own little section. Remember, I'm focusing on the lines being as true. And notice everything gets kind of fatter, right? So now my stick figure has a lot of, it ate a lot of McDonald's, I guess. Everything's just getting nice and fattened up. And you see how those movements or the angles of the legs, etc., end up growing out. Again, this is called contour lines. This is a really nice way to take the outside edge of something and just create a line that hugs it. Contour lines are really important in art because they can show movement. They can also help emphasize things like the outside edges of our images, like our stick figures. And now you can do multiple stick figures together. That could also be a fun way to get those contour lines. See, I closed off another one right here. And so this is a super fun project, playing around with our colors. Now remember, as we're choosing our colors, if you don't notice, I'm trying to flip-flop them a lot because I want to have some really good contrast between my colors so that they pop really nicely for me. And so I'm trying to make sure that I choose colors that are bright and high contrast. But that's just for this project. Maybe you just really love the color purple and you want to do all kinds of different shades of the color purple. You can do that. There's a lot of artists that play with layering line work on top of itself with contour lines. As a matter of fact, didn't we, do I still have this page labeled? Maybe I do. Oh yeah, we just did a project. Of course, this is a really basic, simple representation, but Frank Stella, he was one that also worked on these repetitive lines, almost contour-like and geometric lines, while also using bright colors for the contrast in order to add to the design. Bill says, going to do more quick volunteering. Thanks as always. We'll see you tomorrow. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me, Bill and Linda. I hope you guys have a good time volunteering. I saw that you guys were helping pack a bunch of groceries for those in need. Such a wonderful community thing to do, and thank you so much for giving back to your community. That's awesome. I always like to do shout outs for people that I know that are doing things like that because, you know, our strength is together, and it's so awesome that people like you are doing that. So you guys rock. Thank you so much for hanging out. I'm going to continue working on this. I've got some bright blue going in, and you see how fun this is starting to look, guys and gals. And so I'm just using my contour lines. We're doing a super simple kind of, this is back to basics. This is Throwback Thursday, I'm sorry. And this is, you know, getting a throwback to our elementary kind of style projects. And if you're parents, this is a great project in order to do with your kiddos as well. You can make a stick figure for each person in your family. And that makes for a fun way to pull the colors out and give everybody their own little, you know, everybody could have their own set of colors that get repeated over and over as you do all the contour lines. And you see how this starts looking really, really neat. I want to make sure I don't forget about my inside sections. You see I finished that one, and that one's got a little one right there. So I've actually closed those off because those are all done because I reached my maximum width on those. And so again, we're just continuing to add to, trying to do it as clean as possible. You know, when you use the markers, if you use the tip, it gives you a thinner line. If you use the side, it gives you a fatter one. So I'm just trying to make sure that I'm using the fatter side of my marker so that I can get that done. We'll get her done. So this is just one little quick project that we're going to do with our stick figures. We're going to finish this one out fairly quickly, and we're going to work on another way to take our figures and kind of expand on them. I really like playing with colors and contour lines because this is a really good practice for making sure that we're being careful with how we make our lines. You know, that attention to detail, just getting our lines to look nice and neat, stacked next to each other, kind of like soldiers in a line. This helps us create cleaner marks, and it helps us get better at being artists because it makes us better at using the materials. And we get to play around with how to make people, stick figures, expressive. You know, make them look like they're doing things. Make them look like they're running around, right? And how do we do that? We do that through control of the lines. All right. This is turning out real cool. We're continuing to work on our bright colors. I think I'm going to switch and get some of this Sharpie in. I think this will be a nice big bold hit. And so we're just playing around with continuing to get contour lines around our person. And you see how the shape totally changes. Do you see how it's this really big kind of bulby shape? It doesn't even look like the original stick figure anymore, which is really cool for us to see. As things get patted around, it kind of changes the original shape too. You can do this with letters as well. For instance, you could write the word love, and you could make all these radiate out from your block letters. This is a really fun way in order to create drawings or cards for others. You know, don't knock making art as the perfect gift-giving experience, not only for you, but for someone else. So maybe if you're drawing today, draw for somebody that you care about. So I'm continuing to work, and look how neat that's looking. Right, we're having all kinds of fun with our faces, with our, I'm sorry, not our faces, but with our, you know, our stick figures. I'm going to go ahead and give them some little, got a little eyebrow, give them a little happy face, right? And we're playing around with our little people, give them some hair, you know. So contour lines are a really fun way in order to grow our shape and play around with our stick figures. We can also create finished pieces with our stick figures. So we're going to go over a little bit of that and play around with, again, the idea of taking just simple lines and giving them personality. How do you give something that's just a series of lines a bit of personality? Well, you can do that through the intelligent use of lines. When we think about lines, lines can do a lot of things. Lines are pretty powerful, actually, especially when it comes to drawing. So when we go to look at doing our person, we first, when we're drawing a stick figure, we want to think, is it going to be something that's happy, or is it going to be something that's doing something? And I almost, you know, I want to think of something inspiring, because I'm always big on inspiration, so I'm trying to think of cool ideas to continue to share with you guys, everyone, in order to continue to make classes exciting and fun. So I'm going to play around with an idea of trying to get my stick figure to do something. And so that's what I think I'm going to play with. And we're going to play a little bit with different materials. So for this one, I'm not going to use my pen for it. I'm actually going to be using some of my oil pastels. And you know what? Doubly on that, I think I'm gonna do it on my bigger paper here, my other book that I've been working in. Oh look, there's our doodle that we made of our poodle. Ha, get it? Mom jokes again. But we did Doodle Poodles where we took out the shape of, actually Bill and Linda are your regulars, they love poodles, so we were trying to figure out how to do animals and throw designs in those things. And look how expressive that got already with the eyes and the mouth and stuff, even though we didn't totally get it done. Super fun to do Doodle Poodle Doodles. So if you haven't checked that out, you should. It's a fun way to take the idea of Zentangles and add that into another project. So for this one, I'm going to actually do this in my book because I'm going to do a bit of watercolor resist, meaning I'm going to use my oil pastels, but I'm also going to use a bit of watercolor on top of them so I have a nice kind of resist image going on. Now I've got a bunch of different colors of pastels, and I've got a bunch of different watercolors. Now if you don't have pastels, you can also use crayons, and you know what, perhaps I'll do that since I figure most of y'all with the kiddos might just have crayons. So I've got a nice bin. My kids are teens now, they don't use them half as much as they used to, but we had a large amassing of random crayons and markers that I'm finally paring down because I don't use them as often. So I've got a wide variety of crayons, from big fat ones to smaller ones. Now I gotta remember my watercolor's vibrant and full of colors, so if I'm going to do a watercolor resist, I want to make sure that the colors that I draw with on my crayons are going to have what's called high contrast, meaning it's going to be totally different from the watercolors that I plan to paint on my paper, which means I gotta think about it a little bit. So we're gonna think about our stick figure and what we might want him or her to do. And I really think that I want to focus on this idea of an idea. And ideas are something that can be uplifting and help you figure out stuff, right? And I want to think of a fun idea, don't you? And so I'm going to focus on that for my stick figure dude. And how am I going to make my stick figure dude look like he's come up with an idea and that it's exciting and makes him feel uplifted? So this is where we're going to problem solve this. Now, I think an idea of, when I think of an idea and I think of simple things like drawings and comics, etc., I always think about those little thought bubbles. Do you guys know those little thought bubbles? Boop! They come up above like our little heads when in the cartoons, and that's where all the words and the thoughts are. So I think I'm going to want that for my stick figure. But I also want to show that they're uplifting. So I think I'm going to draw, I don't know, here. I'm going to draw some arms. Maybe I don't want to make it super big because I want to make a whole image, right? So I'm going to get my stick figure arms. Maybe we'll just do some little round things for the feet. Maybe I'll just have that right there. And then maybe this is where a thought bubble could live. Ooh, I like this. So I'm going to use, not my oil pastels, but I'm going to use my crayons for this. So I want to get my thought bubble drawn in, and you're not going to be able to see this very well because I'm going to use the white crayon for my thought bubble. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my big thought bubble, and I'm going to color the whole thing in because I'm not going to put any words in it right now, but I might want to later, and I just want to do a little resist. Sometimes it's not the thought. Sometimes, you know, for this image we just want to do the bubble itself. So I'm just going to go in, you know, and I'm just creating, you know, a simple little cloud bubble. It's nothing terribly complicated, but I am going to color it in. Now I'm using watercolor paper so that I can paint on this. And I'm going to go around the hands because I don't accidentally want to color somewhere. Now, even though you can't see me coloring, I can see me coloring. Even though I'm coloring white on white, I can still kind of see on the paper where I have it covered with crayon and I do not. And so for this I want to make sure that I've got my whole bubble covered because this is where I want it to resist the watercolor. I don't want any watercolor paint to go here. Well, Miss Amber, why don't you just not paint there? Well, because it creates a really, really cool texture when we paint on top of our crayons. Alright, I've got this cool little big thought bubble going on. I'm going to actually create some circles here. So it definitely looks like the thought bubble is coming from my person. And then I'm also going to draw in some nice deep dark here. Ooh, that's a purple. I didn't mean to do that. Don't I have a black? Here's a black. I'm going to use black for my stick figure. And I'm just going to use the watercolor and give it, not watercolor, the crayon. Give it some nice solid lines. And little rounded pieces for the feet, yeah. And a nice round face for that. I'm going to put some hair at the top. I think that'd be super cute. And you know what? I don't think I want any watercolor inside of the hands or the feet. So I'm going to actually go in with my white, and I'm going to try to, as cleanly as possible, get that in there. Now it will pick up some of the black, so I'm actually just going to wipe it on my finger, and I'm going to get the rest of that black off of there. And I'm just going to go in. It'll gray a little bit. No biggie. And I'm going to get that all cleaned off. I'm going to erase out the extra pencil lines that I have in here. And then I'm going to get the face colored in. Just because I don't want any watercolor in here. I'm going to be really careful when I get to those outside edges because I don't want to pull too much of that black into my face. Yeah? Okay, so I'm going through. I've got my thought bubble. I've got my little guy floating up, my gal, I guess. And you know, I want to maybe we'll do a light bulb here. A light bulb is kind of like a circle. We'll draw a circle in order to get that going. And then we'll get our light bulb, you know, because we're thinking about ideas. And so I think that that'd be fun in order to showcase that idea there. So now that I've got that kind of drawn out, I think I'm going to do it with my crayon. And so I'm going to go in and get a nice shape for my light bulb put in. I think that's a good basic shape. And then I'm going to try to make it look like the threading for the bulb. And then we'll have some nice little wires in there. That's super fun. I think that'll be fun for our Watercolor Resist. And for this one, I think I will just end up doing that in a different kind of color rather than going in and creating all of that. I do want to put some yellow in here because I do want to make sure it looks like I've got all of this, a fire and a flame and a light on. And then we're gonna create some, I don't know, we'll create some little power rays from the light bulb. This is a really fun way to play with our stick figures and create this whole kind of idea, and also play around with our different materials. So I've got a lot of basic stuff going on here. I think that works out pretty well. Now the last thing I need is I've got this light bulb and it's kind of laying on the ground here. I'm going to give it a shadow. Yeah, and maybe I'll give this guy a little shadow here so it looks like he or she is floating. And then I'm going to create what's called a horizon line. So I'm just going to do a line going all the way across. That kind of, you know, all of a sudden, boom, now we have a scene, right? Just adding a line in there is what kind of goes, okay, ground, sky, yeah. So the brain doesn't need a ton, it just needs a couple lines. See, you can totally do more than draw a stick figure. And so I'm going to go in here also, and I'm going to get the rest of the eyes done. Always happy and excited with all the ideas. And now I'm going to go in and start playing around with some of my watercolor. So I've got a water bin here already with water. You can just use a simple cup. Mine has multiple areas in it, so it makes it easier for me to clean off some of my brushes. And then of course I've also got all of my brushes to choose from. So I think what I'm going to do is I've got to choose what colors that I want to use first, and we've got to get those pre-soaked, because right now the material or the pigment is in a cake. And so this cake is going to have water added to it for it to be usable. So I'm going to go in and pick a brush out. I think I'm going to get this, we'll get this big one right here. And I'm going to go ahead and prep some of my blues, because I'm going to want my blues for my sky. So I'm going to drop some water on it, and I'm going to let it sit for a minute. My cool colors are going to be my blues and my purples and my greens. So I think what we'll do is we'll do all of our cool colors, maybe a mixture for our sky kiddos. And then what we can do for the floor is maybe the idea is red hot and we can make the floor like lava. So we'll use our warm colors. And our warm colors are all the colors that kind of represent fire pretty much. So you think your oranges and your yellows and you know, our reds. So we want to make sure that we're kind of showcasing that. And I think that that'll be a fun way to get a bunch of different colors onto the shape. And look at this fun stick figure with this idea, and you can't even see the idea yet. You're like, what idea? There's nothing there. Just wait, it's coming. Okay, so I'm going to get my paper a little saturated, meaning I'm going to put some water on it, just a little bit, because right now the paper's really, really dry. And I'm going to be putting a lot of watercolor on this. So, ooh, that's moving that crayon around a little bit. We don't want to paint over it too much. I'm just getting it on the little bits of the paper. I'm not running it over everything. Now I'm going to go over to my blues. Oh boy, this is going to be fun. And I'm going to start getting some of my blue on here. And I'm going to kind of get a different amount of colors all the way around. And watch this. Woo! Oh my gosh. Now we have the really fun, movement of our colors around our paper. And you see how that resist from the crayon works so well in order to add more to our drawing. Look at that. That is so fun and neat, you guys. I'm going in. My black crayon's moving around a little bit, meaning I'm picking it up with my color. So I'm just not going to go over it a ton because I don't want to get that face all smeared up. But look at all these great colors. And I'm just kind of picking up some of these greens. And I'm just kind of playing around with it and putting it in different areas. Remember, we are doing all of our warm colors. So I'm really just trying to take a little bit from each cake so that I can get a fun, interesting background. Look at that. Look at that thought bubble that just totally popped up. Man, that's so cool. I like that a lot. You can always wipe it off more, but what happens is, because of the wax and the crayons, it repels the water. So it creates this really cool effect where the water just beads up on top of our crayon, whether it's white or colored. And that allows us to really kind of play around, and that's really cool because you didn't really know. You couldn't see all of that cloud there, but it did come out after all. So I'm going to go ahead and play around with my warm colors. I want to get some nice warm colors throughout here. And I just now put paint or water in my paint, so I need to actually get it going, which means I'm going to have to actually use my brush on it and move that water around to get that pigment, that cake, some of it dissolved. Oh, look at that. See how that gives me a brighter color right there. That's nice. So I'm going to get my orange here. I'm going to be careful around his feet just because my crayon has moved a little bit. And I'm not going to paint inside the light bulb yet. I'm going to pull up some red. Oh yeah, that's fun. And so you see me just coloring in and drawing, and now I'm going to kind of rinse out my brush. I just dipped it in water and then kind of squeezed it, so now I've got a lighter version of all the rest of those colors that are on my table, and I'm going to paint that in my light bulb so it's not so vibrant, but it still has that great watercolor resist of that yellow that I drew in there. So we really got to play around with color a bunch today and play around with our stick figures in a bunch of interesting scenarios. And we learned how to take our simple line shapes of the human body and be able to give it a bit of personality and make it look like it's doing something. And this is a really good way in order to start practicing drawing people. Even if you kind of sit and you oddly stare like a weirdo at somebody else that is in the home with you, or maybe you go out and drink coffee or soda, you can take a little book with you and you can do little stick figure drawings of people around you to kind of show what they're doing. I like doing all that kind of stuff because it's taking something again simple, simplifying it, and breaking things down to their most, simple of things. For instance, everybody always thinks, sitting on the toilet's funny, so you could really just do all kinds of fun stuff and make it look like you've got a little stick figure guy or gal reading a paper sitting on the john, right? And so there's lots of ways that you can go in and create all these fun ideas and stories, because farts are funny, and so is drawing and fun. So our stick figure people is a really good, or drawing stick figure people is a really good way to kind of get into the mindset of drawing people. And I know people are really, really complicated, but they really aren't at the same time, and being able to simplify us down to those wire kind of beings makes it fun, and it makes it fun to make colors radiate out from the things that we do, so that we can also, continue on, and we're always putting off vibes, aren't we? If you're happy, if mom's happy, everybody's happy. Have you heard that? Or if you're happy, then you're more likely to be wonderful to people around you. So I mean, kind of the same thing with our stick figures. If they radiate those things out, they can affect their worlds as well. Hey, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Oh yeah, China Cat, I hope that you share all this out, and I hope that you also continue to grow your own creativity. It's always a wonderful thing to do, and research-based scientific studies even showcase that it does things like brings down blood pressure, raises mental health, it decreases depression and anxiety. It does a lot of things for our bodies that are really good when we get into that creative mode, which is part of why I work so hard as a teacher to do things like bring these classes to y'all, because I know so many people are in so many different positions due to the current crises that are taking place. And so, this is one way that we can conduct a little self-care, and we can do it fairly inexpensively. And this is care also that's going to help breed and grow a love for arts even more within all of ourselves, which in the end is really good for community, because the arts are something that enrich our lives in ways that we kind of understand, but I don't think we quite fully understand either. Ancient civilizations knew. There's a reason why they covered every surface with art. It's intrinsically, I think, something that's intertwined and very much a part of the human experience. So thank you for taking part in that human experience with me. Make sure you check out our virtual art gallery. We have hundreds of pieces for sale, all done by local DFW artists, all entrepreneurs, small business owners. Make sure that you go through, peruse, percolate on, and purchase an original piece of art. It's the ultimate in exclusivity. Also, make sure you're taking a look at the rest of our streams. We've got a lot of amazing streams by amazing local musicians as well. Make sure you're checking those out. We've done those on-site, off-site, virtual. I've even held front lawn concerts in front of my lawn here in Rockwall. A great way to feed artists. You can inexpensively book artists pairing together with neighbors in order to bring them into your neighborhoods during, not too late of a time. Check with your codes, etc. I had local PD that came by and had some fresh tacos too. We made chicken tacos. It was a fantastic time, and it's good for community and helps feed artists. So that's another thing that we've got on our live streams, and if you're interested in that, please make sure that you contact us, contact me, and we'll help get you organized with your own neighborhood block party. And then also make sure you're taking a look at our donation links, anything in order to assist us in making it towards the other side. We have plans to open up soon. We will have our yard open. We will have new art shows going up and a new show with our panels, so please make sure you're checking our schedule and staying up to date on all the new things that we have that are going to be coming out. And of course, make sure you check back with me tomorrow at 3 p.m. I will be back with Friday. We'll be playing with color and painting, and it will be a higher elevated class from today, and it will be a blast. Always so happy to create with you guys. You have a wonderful day. Thank you, China Cat. It's always a bright spot in my day as well to be able to have these classes, interact with you guys, and then also, make some stuff myself. And you can tell Doobs, sometimes he's into it. Today, he fell asleep on my round pillow in the other room, so I just kind of picked him up and brought him, and so he never really got out of napping mode, but, he was chilling, nevertheless. Alright, I will see you guys on Friday at 3 p.m. You have a wonderful evening.